The weight of rain. It was raining the first time Mira saw Thomas, the slow kind of rain that coated windows in melancholy and made the city smell like rust and old stories. She was standing under the awning of a bakery, flipping through an umbrella she had forgotten how to fold properly, when he walked up beside her and offered his. "You look like you're trying to fight a dragon," he said. "I'm losing," she replied without thinking. He laughed. It was a quiet, breathy sound like he hadn't laughed in weeks. They walked the next few blocks together, sharing the umbrella, not asking names, not even glancing at each other much. Just footsteps in sync on wet pavement and the hush of the storm around them. 3 days later, Mira walked into the bookstore near her apartment and found him behind the counter. His name tag said Thomas. "I never got your name," he said, smiling like he'd been hoping she'd show up. They fell into orbit after that. Not a firestorm, not an explosion, just a slow magnetic pull. Coffee after work. Long walks through rain-slick parks. Conversations that stretched past midnight, filled with things they never thought they'd say to anyone. Mira told him about the brother she lost when she was 12. Thomas told her about the mother who never remembered his birthday. They never said, "I love you," not because they didn't feel it, but because it felt too fragile to name. Like speaking it aloud might break whatever held them together. Instead, they built their language, notes on napkins, Polaroids taped to the fridge, songs shared through earbuds on the subway. When Thomas kissed her in the stairwell of her apartment one evening, it was quiet. A pause between sentences, the kind of kiss that didn't need to mean forever, just now. But now lasted longer than either of them expected. 2 years passed. They moved in together, bought mismatched mugs, had loud arguments about who forgot to buy milk, fell asleep on the couch more times than they cared to admit. Mira started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. She set up a tiny studio in the corner of their one-bedroom apartment. Thomas would read to her while she worked. Sometimes, he'd fall asleep with her brushes in his hand. But love, Mira learned, doesn't protect you from everything. Especially not from the slow unraveling of someone's mind. It started small. Thomas forgot the name of the street where they bought their favorite dumplings. Then the name of the dog they sometimes watched for a neighbor. One day, he stood in their kitchen and asked Mira where the spoons were, even though they hadn't moved in 3 years. She thought it was stress, work, the long hours at the bookstore. But it wasn't. The diagnosis came like thunder, early onset Alzheimer's. He was 32. Mira didn't cry in the doctor's office. She held his hand. She asked the questions. She nodded and said, "Okay," too many times. It wasn't until they got home, until he sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "Will you still love me when I don't know who you are?" that she let herself break. "I'll love you even if you forget what love means," she said. And she meant it. The months that followed were a war against time. Mira became part caretaker, part memory keeper. She painted more large, sweeping pieces that filled their apartment with color. Each one was a moment, a memory, a safeguard against forgetting. She labeled everything, left notes, recorded audio stories of their firsts and lasts. Some days were beautiful, others devastating. He'd call her the girl from the rain and not know why. One morning, he woke up and packed a bag. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Home," he said, confused. "Think, someone's waiting for me." She didn't stop him. She walked beside him, bag in hand, as he wandered their neighborhood. He pointed at buildings he didn't recognize, trees he once climbed. Finally, he sat on a bench and looked at her with tired eyes. I don't know why I keep walking, he whispered. Because I'm still here, she said, sitting beside him. And I'll walk with you as long as I can. Eventually, Thomas stopped remembering her name. But he remembered how she made his tea, how she tucked the blanket under his chin, how her voice sounded when she hummed under her breath. The last time he said her name really said it like he knew what it meant was during a rainstorm. He stood at the window, hand on the glass, and whispered, "Mira." She wrapped her arms around him from behind and closed her eyes. "I'm right here," she said. He passed away 5 months later, in the early hours of a quiet spring morning. The rain had stopped. The sky was pale. At the funeral, she spoke only 2 words. He remembered. Years went by. Mira aged slowly, gracefully. Her hair turned silver. The bookstore stayed open. She still painted. People asked her if she ever found someone else. She said no, not because she didn't want to, but because her heart still walked through puddles under a shared umbrella. One rainy afternoon, a young girl came into the bookstore with her mother and asked Mira why the back wall was filled with framed paintings of stars, shoes, coffee mugs, spoons, and umbrellas. "They're love letters," she said. "I painted them for someone who forgot, so the world would remember for him." Outside, the rain fell softly. Mira didn't reach for an umbrella. She stepped out and let the sky kiss her skin. Somewhere in the rhythm of the falling water, she still heard his laugh. And she walked home in it alone, but never lonely. She opened the door to their apartment, still filled with his books, her paintings, the memory of warm tea. She made a cup, lit a candle, and sat by the window. In the distance, thunder murmured. She whispered his name. And for a moment, she swore the rain answered back. That night, as she flipped through an old sketchbook, a loose envelope fell out. Her name was written on the front in a shaky but familiar hand. "Mira, to be opened when it rains." Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter inside. It was dated 2 months before his death. "My Mira, if you're reading this, then I remembered long enough to write it. Long enough to try. I know I'm disappearing piece by piece. But sometimes in the quiet you come back to me like lightning, sudden and blinding. You were never just the girl from the rain. You were the one who stayed. The one who saw me when I couldn't see myself. I may forget your name, your face, even your voice. But I won't forget the weight of loving you. I asked the nurse to help me hide this for you. I hope you find it on a rainy day. Because even if I can't say it then, I'll always be standing next to you under the same sky. Love you always. T." Mira pressed the letter to her chest, her tears falling freely now. The twist wasn't that he had forgotten. The twist was, part of him had never let go. She placed the letter in a frame and hung it beside the window, the one that looked out onto the gray rooftops and sky where they once traced constellations with their fingers. Days turned into seasons. Mira found herself writing more letters, not to be sent, but to be stored, tucked between the pages of books Thomas loved, folded beneath flower pots, slipped behind photo frames. Each one began with "Remember when," and ended with her signature, looping in bold. On the anniversary of his passing, she organized a small gallery show. The weight of rain. People from the neighborhood came. Some strangers, some old friends. They walked through her memories. Canvases of the stairwell where they kissed, the cracked mug he refused to throw away, the bench where he forgot why he kept walking. And beside each painting, a printed letter. That night, after the gallery closed, Mira stood in the center of the room alone. She looked up at the skylight as the first drops of rain began to fall. And then soft footsteps. A young man stepped inside, drenched from the storm, clutching a worn book in his hands. "This belonged to my father," he said. "He told me to give it to someone named Mira if I ever found this gallery. Said she'd know what to do with it." Mira took the book, an old journal. Inside, pages were covered in water-damaged ink, fading sketches, and one last entry dated just before Thomas's diagnosis. "If I lose everything, I hope I remember the sound of her voice when she says my name." Mira closed the journal gently. Her heart ached, but it beat steady. The rain tapped against the windows like an old friend returning. And this time she smiled, not just for what had been lost, but for what had been found.